avoiding stockouts, surpluses, and surprises. In this episode of Supply Chain Now Radio, Greg White, founder of Blue Ridge Global, discusses the power of efficient forecasting and embracing Amazon for success.
All right, so let's move along. Lee, we've got a wonderful leadoff hitter in Mr. Greg White. So for those of you that don't know, all 7 of you, Greg White is the founder of Blue Ridge Global, as a cloud-based supply chain planning and demand forecasting company located here in Atlanta, right by SunTrust Park. So Greg has more than 20 years of supply chain experience at organizations including Servigistics and JDA Software. He's also successfully transformed supply chains for more than 100 companies, including Fortune 500 companies such as Best Buy and Newell Rubbermaid. I'm also pleased to serve with Greg as part of the Georgia Logistics Summit Executive Committee, where we're planning to have our best summit yet, right?
Darn Skippy.
Greg's got a very interesting topic to explore with us today. How can retailers compete against Amazon? So
you spend the first half of the show just talking about Amazon. Now you're
absolutely
bringing Greg in.
Is there anything else to talk about? Really,
best frenemies, I think. That's a cool thing. So we were talking, Greg, kind of down in the lobby earlier about how we've got to do business not like it's 1987 anymore, right?
Right. I mean, really, it's the consumer that's changed as much as anything. If you think about the days of Mad Men, if you've ever watched that, the consumer was driven to be the person that the marketing organization wanted them to be. And today, the brand selections that they make are more a reflection of their comfort with their own persona rather than helping them shape their own persona. So the tables have really turned in retail and particularly in e-commerce. And largely Amazon is responsible for that. They've set the 2-day expectation that we were talking about. They've set the ubiquitous nature of availability, and they've really cornered the market, as Elba was talking about. They've got their own set of customers. I mean, Amazon Prime customers spend $1,300 a year on Amazon.com. That's a number that most retailers would die to have, right?
Absolutely. The Amazon effect.
And they pay for that privilege.
They do, but you get some really good
stuff,
benefits.
Right?
You get
So that changes the game, but when you're a member of something, that changes kind of the relationship.
It's been described as a ring fence, right? It's a way to create and connect that affinity. Lots of retailers have done it. Amazon or Kroger has their Kroger Plus card, and lots of
Costco.
other retailers. Right. It's a proven methodology, right?
So let me ask you. So of course they've changed the game. We've all heard about the Amazon effect. We're all expecting different and fast delivery and all aspects. The DMV, I want to be served in less than 2 days, right?
Even the DMV has improved.
So they've changed the game, but does that really make Amazon the enemy?
Yes and no. So the way I like to think about it is enemies with benefits. It's there's no way to not compete against Amazon, and there are lots of ways to participate in the Amazon ecosystem. So, Amazon is going to make 50% of all online sales this holiday season. That's up from 38% last year. So are they the enemy? Yes, there's no doubt. When companies like Walmart, they go out and buy Jet to try and get in the e-commerce game, that shows you just how prominent this company is. But at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity to participate in that ecosystem and leverage your own niche. I mean, there are lots of, if you do, and I try to participate in Small Business Saturday, there are lots of companies that have a niche and have a similar following. They just don't have the distribution that you can get on Amazon. And you can participate in that. You can be a fulfillment center for Amazon. You can sell on Amazon. You can sell direct. There are even options. So there are companies out there that help retailers compete. There's a company particularly called Radial that essentially duplicates the Amazon fulfillment network without you having to be in cahoots, so to speak, with Amazon.
Well, so let's talk more about embracing it. So what are some of the other things that retailers can do to embrace it's not the future, it's embrace the here and now?
Yeah, it is embrace it. One is to cease denial. There's a lot of denial out there. A lot of companies say they want to be the Amazon of their industry. And if it's not too late, it is inevitable. In many industries, it's already too late, but it is inevitable that Amazon will be the Amazon of whatever industry we're talking about. They've proven that. I mean, they bought a $13 billion grocery retailer on a whim, right? They're a $200 billion company with over $50 billion in cash. They can create or buy anything that they want. And that's everything from retail organizations or retail channels to technology to even supply chain. They're even building their own supply chain because they were hurt so bad in 2015 by the inability of the current supply chain network to fulfill at the pace that they expect, they and their customers expect. So we have to embrace it and kind of own it, accept it, and then deal with it. And the way that retailers can deal with it is they've got to recognize what their niche is. They've got to generate cash, which is not new for anybody in retail. And they've got to embrace new technology.
Right. It's the cash.
Cash, yeah. Cash is king.
It was supposed to be king.
Yeah.
Now, this type of disruption isn't unusual. This happens periodically. I mean, at one point, Walmart was the person that was like, hey, Walmart, if you're not in Walmart, you're missing out and you got to work around our rules. And then Amazon came, and now it seems like we're having the same conversation, but with just a different company.
Yeah. And, this too shall pass, right? I mean, remember when we were so concerned about Amazon or Walmart putting stores everywhere,
business, right?
And AutoZone with auto parts and various and sundry.
And Sears at one point was Amazon.
Right. That's a tragic story in and of itself, isn't it? I mean, the original mail order company can't survive in what is effectively a mail order world.
Yes. To that point, I was trying to explain to my kids what a wish book was as we were talking about holidays and Christmas and all. And boy, deer in headlights, they couldn't believe that we'd page through and circle and,
and waited 3 weeks.
Yeah, right.
What were you going to say?
Amazon has altered retail, has changed the face of retail as we know it.
No doubt.
But not only have they affected retail, but they have also affected transportation. Because with the new expectations they've set for the consumer, now the last mile programs have become very popular. It's a new phenomenon, so they're popping up all these distribution centers throughout to be accessible within a day to 2 days, to their consumers. So that has affected to where some opportunities have been lost, but new opportunities have been created.
Yeah, they have same day delivery now, and the fellow who delivered my same day, I just tried it just for fun. The fellow who delivered it, talk about a non-traditional channel, was in a 96 Lexus LS 400. So obviously he had dozens of other packages in the car. So that's what he did, right? He's like Uber for packages.
So we were talking cash generation in terms of things retailers can do. What else? Let's talk about competitive advantage, right?
Yeah, companies have to recognize their niche. So I spoke at a trade show in a distribution industry, also an industry that Amazon is going into, B2B as well as B2C. And what was said there was, I can't conceive a world where Amazon could do what this little $40 million distributor, can do. And again, that's more of that denial. But in truth, what that company was talking about was their technical expertise. So you've got to learn to leverage what is your niche or your expertise. If that's technical expertise, or if that's a really, really niche market, then leverage that and figure out a way to capitalize on it. Additionally,
you have to kind of identify your superpower, and a lot of it, I would think, in today's world is going to be the relationships, right? And these personal interactions that you're having with your customer that Amazon is going to have a difficult time.
Well, I wouldn't say Amazon's going to have a difficult time with anything, but that makes a good point.
To Albert's point, it's that last mile. It's that the last interaction is a human being to a human being.
Yeah.
And that's where the small guy has a shot, I think.
But yeah, I think where the smaller companies can really make hay is identifying a very niche market and going after it strongly, and then utilizing a broader distribution channel to spread that market. I mean, think of old brands that are now ubiquitous, right? North Face started out as a few people selling jackets, right? So the opportunity to expand that is still there. You have to think about how you can do that in conjunction with your enemy with benefits, in conjunction with Amazon as well.
So speaking of enemies, and embracing the enemy, right?
Yeah.
That's a big part of the message we were talking earlier today about, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the thing that Amazon has done that has made them enemy and can also make them friend or at least associate is that they have changed the way that they look at demand, the way that they look at the marketplace. So if you think about in our industry, so we have this forecasting and demand planning package. And if you think about the old days, the 80s, as Scott was talking about, we used to forecast items, right? Items are sitting on the desk in front of us right now. And we would say things like the seasonality of that item or the trend of that item or what that item's going to do. Well, look at these items in front of us now. What have they done while we've been sitting here? Not a thing. So what are we really predicting when we're forecasting? We're really predicting the consumer, and that is the gap that Amazon has bridged, and that's the gap that companies need to embrace, and they need to address with today's technology. You can't use 87. Is that the year you picked? Yeah. I'm not sure why you picked 87. You can't use 87 technology in a 2050 world, and you have to start to predict what the consumer is doing, and that's a gift that I think both niche players that we were talking about and Amazon can really do is connect.
Now, when you're talking about that, are you talking about like machine learning and artificial intelligence and that type of thing?
All of that, yeah, for sure. I mean, there are technologies that are required to do that: machine learning, predictive analytics, AI. There are a lot of ways to approach that.
So now a lot of these companies aren't embracing that technology yet. I mean,
they aren't yet because to date, it's been, the 1987 style of employing that kind of technology is very, very expensive. Millions, tens of millions of dollars to do. And what I think smaller companies, the benefit that they have is that having sunk a lot of that cost, they can go to a lower cost, more rapidly deployed and ultimately more advanced technology because the cloud. There we go. We had to say cloud.
You got to every supply chain conversation.
If you think about what the cloud really is, there's no magic in the cloud, as we've all seen from clouds. It's really that there is unlimited power in the cloud, right? That it's a bunch of computers out there that you can run the most complex, the most accurate algorithms against, and get an answer back in a reasonable amount of time without spending tens of millions.
Right.
Of
it's becoming more and more affordable.
Yeah. So companies, that's one of the things that companies can do is to embrace new technologies. And they can do it and leapfrog the traditional players. Some of the traditional players we've been talking about today, Walmart, Kroger, some of them, they're saddled with literally hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in old technologies. Some of those technologies from as far back as the 60s and 70s. So that ability to kind of start.
Well, you're kind of jumping steps because you didn't have to have that legacy equipment.
Exactly.
And then you can just start fresh with the new latest and greatest.
Yeah.
And just start running.
Yeah, no doubt. And those opportunities are out there. I mean, that's what we've provided in our product. And that's what other providers have in other products.
So you were talking about the 2050 world we live in and, predicting the future, just bringing it back to just predicting next week. Let's talk more about, the planning side.
Yeah.
You've been involved in transforming a lot of different supply chains. How do we get better at planning?
Well, the key is really to forecast that consumer. It's really to understand the consumer and what drives them. It's funny to say consumer, right? Because sitting around this table, every one of us is a consumer, that's right? So let's just say predicting us. And think about that as a task. That's no small task, right? But there are indicators, believe it or not, that companies can key on that can actually help them understand what you're going to buy next.
They know me.
Right. And it's not what you bought last year. I mean, if you think about how commerce has changed over the years, what we've used in the past is what people bought last year. Moreover, what the items did last year. But what we need to do is use indicators that help us determine it. So what you can do is identify those indicators and then forecast what those indicators mean in the broader spectrum of the consumers. So, if I hate this example, but I haven't gotten off of it yet. So whenever Justin Bieber tweets about something, 15-year-old girls respond, right? I mean, it's a fact. And it's likewise for, various other items, right? That when someone in social media talks about it, people respond. When weather changes, people respond. So what you've got to do is start to forecast the indicators and then assess how people respond to those. Some of those indicators are easier to predict than others. Social media is much easier to predict than the weather. Believe it or not, even Justin Bieber is more easy to predict.
So you get traditional forecasting, and we're going to keep picking on 1987. And forecasting
Is
now.
that when you graduated high school?
No, I pick a different year each time, I think. But, so let's talk about how forecasting has changed. And what are you seeing there?
Well, what I'm seeing now is there's a lot more science. We're using a lot more of the available data. If you think about, particularly an e-commerce transaction, there is a ton of data generated. The retailer that you purchase from, they know where you came from. They know what kind of device you were on. They know the path that you took. They know every ad, site, URL you passed on your way there. They know what was showing on the screen when you selected the item that you selected. They know what was showing in the shopping cart when you went to pay for it. So they can use all those things as correlates to determine what influenced you to make that buy. Did you click on an ad, or did you pass an ad, or what?
But
so you've got to use the wealth of data that's out there.
That information is like factual demographic information. But from that, aren't they also making assumptions about psychographics and saying, okay, this person's an early adopter. They're going to be more inclined to purchase the freshest, newest thing, and they're going to be less inclined to purchase last year's stuff.
They are. That's more of, so a lot of the psychographic and demographic data is more marketing oriented. Is this likely to appeal to somebody? Not necessarily does this convert somebody into a paying customer. So what you've got to look at is, and think about a retail store. They set up the store a certain way with a main aisle or a racetrack, is what Target likes to call it. And they put certain things in front of you. Think about the impulse racks at a register.
Right, the end aisle, right.
They're putting those impulse racks on the internet today to try and drive you to make a decision. So it's more tangible than psychographics or demographics. Those are indicators. Those are indicators of groups of people or types of people or ages or whatever. But this data that we're collecting today indicates what Albert is going to do. We are not forecasting groups of customers. We are forecasting Albert.
Individuals.
Right.
And I've noticed how they use that because, sometimes I'll Google a product, an item that I want to buy. Then I get on LinkedIn and I see an ad for that product. Then I go to Facebook. Then they're bombarding me with that product that I Googled a few days ago.
Actually, that's Greg.
So
Greg is monitoring.
Yes,
So, and just for you, Albert, that doesn't happen to anyone else except you.
No. But I do see. I've become fully aware of how they are using these algorithms to predict what product is going to be popular, how to properly stock those inventories. Just a decade ago, because I come from the retail sector prior to getting in transportation and logistics, I remember we had to predict 90 days in advance some products that were coming from China. We needed to place the orders well ahead of time. Mm-hmm. And if we missed the mark, we missed it.
And it's gone because it's 90 days.
We would have to take a loss on that product that we thought was going to sell, but it would flop. Now I think with all this technology in place, with these algorithms, I think they can make a very educated prediction what item is going to move and how much that item is going to move.
Now, Greg, are you saying that like Albert was saying, that you're going to be wrong less with this data?
You are. I mean, if you think about how forecasting has been conducted, it's to break it down into its simplest parts, it's saying whatever happened last year in aggregate is going to happen again this year with some measure of change. Now you're completely turning that on its head and you're saying, forget about last year in aggregate. let's talk about Albert right now. Sorry, Albert, we're picking on you.
That's all right.
If you've got your Christmas list, actually, I think I have your Christmas list right here.
I only have Alberts from 1987.
It really changes the game. So the way that this technology evolved was really interesting. So after 9/11, there were companies trying to predict who was going to be the next shoe bomber, for instance. So they were not forecasting the likelihood that a terrorist event was going to occur. They were trying to forecast who's the next guy who's going to try and blow his shoe, right? So honestly, I use that as a bit of inspiration to develop this forecasting methodology and the concept of forecasting the consumer, not forecasting the items.
Right.
And that's an important transition. And finally, big data, there we said it, right? Finally, data is available that allows us to do that. Yeah,
it's bingo. We have cloud, big data. What is the other words?
Supply chain. So finally, there's robust enough data available to do this. And finally, to go back to our last keyword, cloud, finally, there is enough processing power because of the power in the cloud to utilize that data. It's not practical to take a system from 1987 and give it the data that we're talking about. It just can't process it.
Right.
It can't do it.
So it's tough to dive into the conversation like this in a 20-minute segment. So if we can kind of conclude this segment, supply chain planning is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Improved, more accurate forecasting is a big critical element that Blue Ridge Global helps their clients with. What else? Tell us about what Blue Ridge does to really increase and improve the performance of supply chain teams.
Sure. So that you've got to take these really advanced concepts and you've got to deliver them in a way that someone can actually use them. A screen or a set of spreadsheets or a bunch of data on a screen is not the way that technology needs to be delivered today. Technology needs to give you the answer, right? The whole benefit of processing all of this data in the cloud is to give you the answer. It's to create the plan. It's to plan ahead, but respond rapidly, and then give the answer to the user based on the business rules and the ecosystem lead times and order frequency and the desired service levels and all of those sorts of things. Look, the point is, the bottom line is what you're trying to produce is no stockouts, right? No surplus and no surprises. And if you can do those three things in retail, then you can compete with anybody, including Amazon. Mm. And to do that, you have to have the technology that literally gives you the answer, where your users aren't trying to discern after all of this advanced science has been used. They're not trying to discern what the answer ought to be. You don't want to say, hey, we did all these calculations. Here's a bunch of options for you. You want to say, we did all these calculations. We understand the totality of your environment. Here is what you need to do. Mm. And if you can deliver an answer that complete, then you can really change things. You can do it cost effectively and you can do it rapidly.
So to learn more, check out BlueRidgeGlobal.com. But y'all have got an interesting event coming up in April, Blueprint 2018. It seems like if you want to avoid stockouts, surpluses, and surprises, a lot of answers can be found at this event, right?
Undoubtedly. The beautiful thing about Blueprint is it's April 22nd to 24th, right? So the beautiful thing about Blueprint is it's a group of practicing professionals getting together to share ideas. So our customers, Ace Hardware, Racetrack, and a number of others, they get together and they say, this is what we did this year. And it's not all about technology. There's also a lot of people intervention in the organization that's required. So they all get together and talk about the successes that they've had and share ideas. And we give them ideas and challenges as well. And it's a great sort of roundtable session as much as learning about our technology. It's learning about technology in the workplace in general and also how you use it to better your organization.
Perfect. Well, we'd encourage our audience to learn more, BlueRidgeGlobal.com. Check out and sign up for Blueprint 2018. That comes about 2 weeks after the Georgia Logistics Summit, which is going to run April 9th through the 11th.
So you and I will be able to go, Scott.
That's right.
We'll be free at that point, yeah.
No excuses.
Yeah,
no excuses. Right. That's right. And this year, of course, the Georgia Logistics Summit is being co-located with Modex and its 30,000 attendees. So 2 great conventions coming up in April here in Atlanta, the supply chain capital of the East Coast. So, Greg, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you sharing some of your story with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks.